Hey everyone, Brian Von VA here. I hope everyone out there, boys, girls, and everyone in between, is having a great day. And without further interruption, D&D players of Reddit, what is the silliest D&D character you've ever made? Part 2. I have an unused character who's a wizard that I plan to be a necromancer. The thing is, though, she's a 7-year-old human girl. I have half background involving a religious near cult-like family and a mistreated gravekeeper who taught her the ways of magic. She also knows the Find Familiar spell, which she uses to summon a male crow materialized as a friend named Mrs. Princess Spockleface. That name can also tell you most of what you need to know about her personality. Gregator is my silliest, but I'm gonna go with my next silliest, Gnomon Cashew. Gnomon is a quadruple amputee gnome armor artificer who pilots a Goliath-sized suit of plate armor like a Gundam. Also has a level 3 dip in Rune Fighter for the giant's might to become a giant robot. Depending on the DM, either I and my armor become large size and then cast Enlarge reduced to become huge, or because the armor is medium size, the armor becomes huge because my small size character becomes large, and then gargantuan when I enlarge. Durwin, the dwarf ranger / barbarian. Imagine a shirtless feral dwarf living in the woods, sometimes acting more like a beast than a human when in the wild. Like, he will sniff the ground and lick stuff to track, or use trees to scratch his back or gnarl at danger. If not faced with surviving in the wild, he was a decent human being to interact with, if you ignore him growling at people he didn't like. He was armed with 2 bone daggers, and in combat was dashing from bush to bush. He was an actual cannibal Shia LaBeouf crossed with Bear Grylls. Uwatu, the mute artificer. He never talked in the first session I ran him in, so he was made decidedly mute. I made him an alchemist, so he will randomly give out potions and act out what they do. He also tinkered and built himself a magic 8-ball, so he could respond to people from time to time with the cryptic and cheesy 8-ball responses you would expect. Flognard the Flaccid. When starting Pathfinder and building characters, my girlfriend said, "Make up a name." So I pulled that name from the ether and built my character around a fighter that got so drunk in a game of goat skull tossing, and with nothing to bet, well, he bet his own testicle. And lost, and went double or nothing, and still lost. I made an archer who shot better when inebriated. The more intoxicated my character was, the better he shot. I got advantage, but otherwise he was a terrible shot, rolls with disadvantage. He was an arcane archer named Astor Avalon. Best moment was when he took a swig and crit on trying to pin a guy by the collar of their cloak. Let's just say that the guy then had a new ear piercing. For several months, I played a wood elf monk named Zalo Rax. Grew up alone in the woods. He spoke to trees in a German accent, then he could speak for them. Ended all conversations relayed from the plants with, "I speak for the trees. Let them be. Let them be." His hometown was Whoville. It took my DM a while to catch on, I think. Finally, I messed up introducing my character to someone else and forgot the German accent, and it came out nice and clear. The Lorax. Although a lot of my party has some weird characters currently, we're planning our characters based on Disney characters. We have Aladdin, a thief with the street urchin background, Ash is basically a homebrew summoner wizard, and a scribe wizard loosely based on Belle. I am about to start playing an armor artificer named Maurice, basically Belle's father from the animated Disney film. Going to play him as looking to free his daughter from imprisonment. Sammy Maddox, human ranger who was based off of the witness I had to play in mock trial in 10th grade. She has anxiety, talks very fast, and will talk until you shut her up. She is also a very sweet and constantly excited Southern belle, married to an OP paladin named Chives. Definitely not the silliest character on this list, but a personal favorite of mine. She's both very fun and very much so hell to play. My ability to roll the dice is so legendarily bad that I once made a shaman who only took spells that gave other characters actions. To make him interesting, he had a spirit vulture whose name he changed constantly, always in alphabetical order. Thus Alan, Ben, Chuck, Devon, so on and so forth. Took the group a couple of hours to figure it out. Character only existed for one session. From a recently started campaign, Michael Jackson, the Changeling College of Creation Bard. He starts his adventure with a heist because he needed to pay taxes for the hoses he sold. He used to be a real estate agent because of a mistranslation on the house agent backstory. Scourge Asamar, Moon Druid, and Sun Soul Monk. With 3 levels in Monk and 2 in Druid, you could, with DM approval, wild shape into a dire wolf, bark laser beams, emit a 20-foot circle of radiant damage, and provide snoot boop heals. I came up with a spellcaster based purely on their title, the necromancer. That's it, that's the joke. Nothing else to it, I just never made it an actual character. An actual character I did make was an awakened cat who became a monk of the Way of Mercy. Her job was to go around giving injured people head pats and being wholesome. However, on occasion, she'd fail an intelligence check to remember that she is, in fact, a cat. Tonsils the goblin is actually a gnome. He speaks with the "woo lisp," so hello, who is you? His village was brutally slaughtered by a group of humans who thought of them as a nuisance. They just kinda hung in the woods. He was the only one left alive because he didn't look like a goblin, actually a gnome. A wandering lich came looking for corpses and found him. He was lonely and became father figure / best friend for Tonsils. Now Tonsils travels the world making friends, bulking humans with his frying pan with smite imbued into it, all from inside his pet skeleton's ribcage, which my table calls Clyde. He is absolutely convinced he is a goblin, actually a gnome. Whenever someone questions that, he uses minor illusion to disguise himself. Unused character. Might bring him into a D&D game at some point, but who knows? Was looking up random classes and races on a D&D homebrew site and found the gentleman class and mousefolk race. Anyway, his name is Sir Abershaw Grimwald Gamelion Whiskers Esquire Jr. III. A mousefolk level 1 gentleman noble who's 17 in age and has only 9 hit points. He wears a top hat and a gold monocle with a nice black suit with matching white gloves, with a golden keychain attached to a watch and a gold inlaid rapier. Backstory. Sir Abershaw was born into a royal family and he was thus well off. However, after a series of unfortunate events, he is the last of his family and thus, through his travels as a royal noble, has made many enemies and many friends along the way, while courting as many fine damsels as he can find through his travels, while never truly wanting to settle down, as the twitch and itch to explore always seems to get the best of him. This one is a hard one to narrow down. I've had a lot of great, silly characters, and I can't just pick one, so let's hit some highlights. Zyrtec, the insert adjective here. He changes his epithet depending on how he wants to appear to others. Is a chaotic evil human wizard whose voice is my best impression of Dr. Doofenshmirtz before I knew about the fantasy short. Sorry if I mispronounced anything. He's a magical prodigy of incredible intelligence and power, but his teachers basically treated him like a slave on the promise of teaching him. One day when he was alone in the wizarding tower scrubbing cauldrons, a freak magical accident teleported the entire tower from the middle of the city to some backwater island that was only just starting to be explored. It plopped down in the swamp where it miraculously didn't sink, but landed right at the edge of an opening to the Fey Wild, which appears every night, and their time causes them to be wide awake. So every night he's kept up by the noise of an elven village who are inordinately fond of playing music and the bright light of their sun shining on his tower. He's horribly sleep deprived and spends most of his waking hours trying to find ways to silence them so he can get some peace and quiet. Moria McShannon is a chaotic neutral warlock, a human who stands about 3 feet tall and is made of sass and fury. She speaks in a heavy Scottish accent and has implied she's bisexual and has to claim she is a dwarf to get into bars. But the most interesting thing about about her is her backstory. Her father was famous as a gunsmith, a rare weapon in that campaign world, and she was happily married off to an elven husband. When her father passed on, she overheard her husband about how he'd already outlived one, he just had to outlive her, and the notes and blueprints of her father's gunsmithing trade were his. She took offense to that and shot him to death with one of the guns she'd crafted herself. In court, she'd plead insanity, insisting she heard the gun speak to her, telling her to do it. She clung so hard to this plea that people started believing her, and the gun one day actually gained sentience. Moria was let off from her crime, but with lifetime parole, for her own safety. This time, her gun actually did speak to her, insisting that life here would never be satisfactory. She agreed, took the gun, now named Charlie, and ditched town. And that's how she became the booze-drinking, gun-toting, smack-talking, Scottish-speaking pact of the gun warlock who is on the run from her parole officers. Last but not least, I had some troubles with a DM who didn't really let me write up the background of my first character, a paladin named Fiora Silversheen, whose patron deity was the abstract concept of beauty. He created one for me, which was frustrating, and I didn't feel like I'd been allowed to play the character I originally designed. So I asked the DM if I could make a new character. The party currently consisted of a rogue, warlock, and a sorcerer, so I wanted to play something that would be a tank, but also could generate easy quests and didn't have a complicated background, but also silly as revenge for my more serious character being overwritten. I found the perfect idea while browsing TV tropes, the concept of the unstoppable postman. It's the idea of a mailman or delivery guy who overcomes ridiculously tough obstacles to make deliveries on time. So was born Thud, the half-orc barbarian postman. Thud, named for the sound he made when he hit the floor head first upon falling out of his mother's belly, was built entirely around one concept: get from point A to B in a straight line, and God help whatever was between those 2 points. Wearing a skin-tight postman outfit, complete with short shorts, and wielding a thundering mailbox like a mole, Thud would proceed to solve puzzles in unorthodox manners, break the game so badly he had to be nerfed on the spot, successfully grapple a kraken for prolonged periods, use one full-grown man to beat another full-grown man into submission, accidentally become immortal, leap across planets, start his own religion, and pin a dragon in mid-air to drop it into a magic circle so it could be cured of the hate curses he'd earned from drawing from the deck of many things 4 times. There's plenty more where this came from, so if people are interested, I'll happily write up more. Death Fist Blood Knife. A half-elf drow rogue who, like most rogues, was an orphan, of course, but he got adopted twice. First set of parents died on him, and the second threw him out for being a kleptomaniac. He now runs around in a black cloak, stealing anything that isn't nailed down, then returning with a crowbar. He also has a penchant for monologuing in an overly deep voice, trying to sound cool. Think Batman wannabe. Hey everyone, Brian Von VA here. If you liked today's video, obviously leave a like, slap that subscribers button, and ring that bell so you get notified whenever we post. Follow MrRipper on Twitter and Twitch, and make sure to join our subreddit r/MrRipper, where you can submit any and all of the stories and experiences you have in D&D or any other RPG for us to read. Using a help action, please, you can come join me, Brian Von VA, over on my YouTube, where I voice your D&D characters, stream some spooky scary games or some fun RPGs, and enjoy my company with other voice actors as well, doing all sorts of voice acting things. With that said, we always try to leave this on a positive note, and I wanted to make sure that this February started with a bang. I've been contacted with people telling me how much of a good impact that I have made just by doing these positive messages at the end of the video, and I wanted to say I'm so grateful that I am able to ease the burden on your everyday life just with my silly, crazy, fun, and serious narrations. I truly do care about each and every single one of you, even if I don't get to respond to all of your comments or messages constantly. But I want all of you to know that the world out there, we're all still here, and we all still care. So all you have to do is open up your heart and say hi to somebody. Say hi today in the comments, and you might make someone feel infinitely better. With that said, please, all the love to every single one of you. Be safe out there. be as happy as you can be, and we will see you next time. Bye for now.